The world of mixed martial arts has seen a fair share of the world's deadliest fights ever. Every MMA fan out there loves to praise the honourable, almost samurai-esque nature of the sport. But sometimes you'll do anything just to see two lads who hate each other so much take on the ring. Today, we have in store for you some of the most heated rivalries in the history of MMA. Let's begin right away. At number 10, Anderson Silva vs. Chael Sonnen. Chael Sonnen's victory over Nate Marquardt at UFC 109 won him a fight with Anderson Silva, elevating the middleweight category to one of MMA's most exciting weight divisions. Although Anderson Silva has long been considered the best fighter in the world, keeping the champion motivated for fights before his first matchup with Sonnen was challenging. The lack of confidence was never more evident than during the UFC fight against Demian Maia, where the champion purposefully avoided making contact for most of the final 2 rounds. Sonnen was on his way to a huge upset in the 5th round after repeatedly knocking Silva to the ground, but with under 2 minutes left, Silva landed a triangle choke that would extend his term as champion. He was booked to meet Silva again around 2 years later. Prior to the rematch with Silva, Sonnen intensified his promotional game, but he didn't perform nearly as well inside the cage this time. In the 2nd round, Silva landed a knee to Sonnen's body, ending the rivalry once and for all. At number 9, Eddie Alvarez vs. Michael Chandler. Bellator is sitting at the most intriguing competitive rivalry in the sport of MMA right now, in the form of Eddie Alvarez and Michael Chandler. Even though they signed Quinton Jackson and Tito Ortiz, Bellator MMA's finest achievement was turning Michael Chandler into a serious challenger to Eddie Alvarez for the lightweight title. The men split their most recent 2-fight series by trading the title. In their first encounter, Chandler choked out Alvarez, stealing the title from the champion, who seemed unbeatable. Alvarez then made a split decision to win back the gold in their most recent fight, setting up this rematch. Unfortunately, an Alvarez concussion broke the excitement. Instead, Chandler fought Will Brooks in an interim championship, losing by a second consecutive split decision. For the time being, Brooks ruined the rubber match, but it's quite probable that Alvarez and Chandler will face off again. They might move considerably on this list if they have another remarkable fight. Number 8. Wanderlei Silva vs. Quinton Jackson. It's really hard to tell how much of this rivalry was based on true resentment, and how much of it was pumped up by promotions looking to hype their most aggressive fighters. Silva and Jackson first faced off in the middleweight championship match in the 2003 Pride Middleweight Grand Prix. 6 minutes into the fight, Silva repeatedly kneed Rampage's head, giving the Brazilian the knockout victory. Jackson was given a second chance against Silva after his slam knockout victory over Ricardo Arona. The Pride Middleweight Championship was on the line this time, but the Axe Murderer yet again stopped Jackson with knees. After his 2 knockout wins, Silva would have felt confident in defeating Rampage any day of the week. However, things went differently when they next faced off under the UFC banner. The UFC's matchmakers believed it was time to reignite the rivalry after Jackson lost his UFC title to Forrest Griffin, and Silva bounced back with a knockout victory over Keith Jarden. Jackson extracted revenge at UFC 92 by brutally knocking out his opponent with a precise left hook to the chin. Number 7. BJ Penn vs. Matt Hughes. BJ Penn was always undersized when he competed at 170 pounds, but it didn't stop him from engaging in rivalries with the top 2 welterweights in MMA history. While Penn's fights with George St. Pierre and Matt Hughes were more evenly matched, they were more than competitive. In January 2004, Penn and Hughes had their first encounter. After ending Hughes' reign with a rear naked choke late in the opening round, Penn vacated the welterweight title before defending it. It appeared that the rubber match wouldn't occur because 7 of Penn's following 8 fights would occur at 155 pounds. The only thing on the line in their fight at UFC 123 was bragging rights, as Penn starched Hughes in only 21 seconds. At the number 6 spot, we have the rivalry between Frankie Edgar and Gray Maynard. Edgar bounced off Penn from the lightweight division by winning back-to-back titles against the Hawaiian. Following that, Edgar began a fierce rivalry of his own with Maynard. A couple of years earlier, Edgar had lost to Maynard in a decision. Gray Maynard, who is currently moving up the lightweight rankings, has positioned himself for a rematch with the 155-pound champion. Maynard's draw with Edgar was sufficient to secure a rematch right away. Similar to how the second meeting started, Maynard injured Edgar right away in the rubber match. However, Edgar once more recovered and won in the 4th round via knockout. Edgar and Maynard are still tied after 3 fights, both having earned 1 victory, and they can meet again in the ring sometime later. Number 5. Gilbert Melendez vs. Josh Thompson. Scott Coker has referred to Thompson and Melendez as two of the four pillars on which Strikeforce was founded. It's the best rivalry to occur wholly outside the octagon. It took Thompson 6 straight victories to earn another shot at the 155-pound title, after Guida defeated him in the first ever 155-pound title match held under the Strikeforce brand. By that time, Melendez had deposed Guida and had successfully maintained his title. Thompson defeated Melendez on the second try. Following a serious injury, Thompson lost some ground against Melendez. Melendez prevailed in a split decision in their third face-off to take the series lead. Although Melendez won the rematch, few fans would be upset to see Thompson and Melendez square off again. This is how strong the rivalry has been. At number 4, Sylvia vs. Arlovsky. Despite taking place during a difficult time for the decision, it's easy to argue that Sylvia and Arlovsky feud ranks among the most legendary in UFC heavyweight history. Only 47 seconds into their first encounter, Sylvia was placed in an Achilles lock, and Arlovsky quickly secured a submission to win the match and claim the UFC Heavyweight Championship. Although Arlovsky had looked as dominant as champion, Sylvia exacted revenge by scoring a knockout in the first round. Even after 2 encounters, Sylvia and Arlovsky were scheduled for a quick rematch, which Sylvia won by decision, but it attracted much media interest. Number 3, Cain Velasquez vs. Junior Dos Santos. After dethroning Brock Lesnar, Cain Velasquez was pushed to defend his championship against Junior Dos Santos at UFC on Fox 1. Not feeling the best after a 12-month break from competition, Velasquez was knocked out by Dos Santos. With sheer determination and proper preparation, Velasquez proved to be the better fighter as he cruised to a decision win over the Brazilian the second time as well. Velasquez dominated Dos Santos yet again in the third attempt. The rivalry heated up pretty quickly. They met in the ring a whopping 3 times in 23 months, and not allowing much time for the rivalry to build up. Well, a fourth encounter is hardly a question as both of them are at their prime of their careers. At number 2, Chuck Lydell vs. Randy Couture. The trilogy between Lydell and Couture will undoubtedly be highlighted if you ask MMA historians about outstanding rivalries and series of fights. The conflict over Ortiz's contract started the animosity since. The Huntington Beach bad boy had no interest in fighting his former partner Lydell, so the UFC chose to schedule Lydell vs. Couture for an interim title match while negotiating with Ortiz. Randy Couture gave Ortiz his wish by stopping Lydell in the third round. At UFC 52, Lydell's moment finally arrived with a knockout in the opening round, marking the start of one of the greatest light heavyweight title reigns in MMA history. Although Couture was 205 pounds at the time and already had a significant position in MMA history, he was far from finished. Although Couture later lost to Lydell by knockout in the rematch, he made sure he was a significant player in one of MMA's greatest rivalries. Finally, at number 1, Georges St. Pierre vs. Matt Hughes. Rarely do prime years of 2 of the greatest players in a division's history coincide, so the pick for the number 1 rivalry was easy. Between October 22, 2004 and December 29, 2007, Georges St. Pierre and Matt Hughes engaged in 3 fights that shaped the welterweight division of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. 2 of the 3 matches, all of which had clear winners, were won by St. Pierre. The 2 men's interactions within the cage continue to be irrevocably linked over 15 years after their final meeting. St. Pierre ultimately regained his undisputed title and hasn't mourned a loss since his surprise defeat to Serra. There might be some respect between fighters, but ultimately they wish to take each other down. So through the years, we've seen some of these amazing rivalries. We've come to the close of today's video. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the post notifications for the best content out there. Stay tuned for more.